Touch Base is back. I'm Josh Haynes, and today we're going to finish off our conversation with Charlie Young, one of the founders, again, of both Madera and Quext. In this episode, Charlie gives us key insights into how Asset and Acquisitions evaluates and purchases properties, plus a bigger picture look into the American housing market. This is going to be some good stuff. Hope you enjoy. You mentioned your acquisitions team and you guys kind of traveling around Houston, looking around and looking to kind of see what's coming. That's another piece of this conversation that's very interesting because, for somebody like me who did not necessarily come from your industry and kind of looking at what we're doing and kind of where we're headed, what are you guys looking for when it comes to we really like this opportunity with this particular property, or this one's neat, but we're kind of looking at it, but that doesn't necessarily fit what we're going for. What are you guys looking at?
You said the right word is opportunity, and I like to say opportunistic.
Okay.
Madera has been opportunistic from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so we recently have been awarded 4 different properties in 4 different types. And so it's not, you're going over and you're just going to buy a nice new core asset.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer doing 80s, and that's not true. It's just, where do we find the opportunity? And
mm-hmm.
so we recently got awarded an affordable housing property that is very similar to a property that we just sold, that we worked through, and we go, that's a great model. It's called a Laura property that has rent restrictions on it for a period of time.
Okay.
And those rent restrictions are going to burn off in December of 23. And so it's in 3 phases. It's got late 70s and early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so would not be what you would look at and go, oh, the prettiest, sexiest thing.
Mm-hmm. But
it has an opportunity, and
yeah.
we recognize the opportunity. Then we got called recently on a property that's a 1985 vintage in White Rock Lake.
Okay.
The first one was in Garland, Texas,
mm-hmm.
and the second one is in White Rock Lake, or south of White Rock Lake, and it was a property that somebody had they had been awarded. They were headed to going under contract. There were 2 properties side by side owned by the same group, and one group took the other property, and the one that we're now getting was awarded to somebody else. They flaked out, fell out, and the price on it dropped significantly because they're tied together and they have to sell, and so they need somebody that could a proven operator, a proven buyer that could go in and pick it up. So where it was valued at $180 some odd thousand a unit,
mm-hmm.
they needed somebody to buy it, and so we're buying that for a little over $160,000 a unit, where the one next door that needs more work is $183,000 a unit.
Okay.
In a submarket that is very hard to build in.
Oh, wow.
Very low supply, very desirable from both the perspective of being close to the core.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a millennial and you so choose to want to still be somewhat in the action and you need a little lower rent, okay, that one fits the bill. But it's also in a suburb, so to speak, of Dallas, but a very, very desirable suburb. So it crosses both barriers. And so that one was presented to me, and I go, yes, know that area, know the dynamics there, and go, yes. But that's a 1985 vintage. Then we got awarded in Houston, in the Montrose area, a 2001 value add.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Do me a quick favor. Will you explain value add? Like,
Yes.
just use that term for me, so that way I make sure we all know what you're talking about.
Thanks for asking that question.
Okay.
And anytime I say some lingo that is confusing, just stop me on that.
Sounds good. Sounds
Okay,
good.
so this is a 2001 vintage.
Okay.
Great property, great location, but it needs capital to take it from this level to this level.
Understood.
And that's where Madera started. That's really where we cut our teeth, was back in the 80s vintage that needed capital put into it to pick it from one level up to the next level. Well, that's a decade ago. So now, instead of it being 80s alone, now you're looking at 1990s vintage to early 2000. And so this is a 2001 vintage in a phenomenal location that if we go and add 20,000 a unit to it for renovation, then we can lift the rents another $200 to $250, and that will provide yield and will provide increased value in return.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another piece of the spectrum. Then we've been looking at a deal that I would call a failed lease-up. And the reason that it was a failed lease-up, it's a 2020 vintage also in Montrose, actually probably about a half a mile from the value add property. And it is 2020, phenomenal build, but the developer opened his doors up March of 2020, the day that COVID hits. Okay, your higher end properties took it on the chin. Your new lease up construction took it on the chin. We've bought another failed lease up in Houston that we've turned around that was phenomenally successful. And we looked at this one and go, okay, in 2 years, we have no question of where the rents are going to be. And so now we got to pick it up just as a failed lease up and go bring it up. So 4 different properties, essentially 3 different markets, but all opportunistic for one reason or another. And I've always told our investors, I said, whenever we come calling and saying, here's a deal, you need to ask what's the story, because there's always got to be a story if it's opportunistic.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you doing that, because you provide so much context to like what you're looking for and where these things are going, because there's so much that goes into this and all the different layers that you've begun to explain for us. I think part of this conversation also, and you touched on this a minute ago, I'm going to ask you to kind of like go ahead and dig a little deeper there. When you start looking at the lack of housing options and you start looking at kind of the older housing options in America, where do you see us really providing value or opportunities or just solutions for people when it comes to looking into, here's what's not available, but Madera offers this. What do you see there?
Let's just talk about housing in general. Okay, and let's draw a comparison. Most people can have a frame of reference back to 2002 to 2007, and then the housing debacle that hit in 08, and bring up to today. And so the housing market is on fire. And they go, okay. And I actually, for 4th of July, I was in Dallas, and I was someplace where I was watching fireworks, and there were some people talking, and it was at an apartment complex. And one of the gentlemen that was sitting there talking, not talking to me, having another conversation, goes, he's not buying a house right now because he's going to wait for them to come down and get the opportunity then. And you get a lot of those conversations, and the first thing I'll go ask people is, I go, okay, when do you see demand coming down? That means, when are people going to stop looking? When are people going to stop coming? So one big problem that we have is we have a shortage of housing that gets lumped together from single family to multifamily. And depending on which analyst you talk to, it could be anywhere from 1.5 million housing units across the nation, anywhere up to 5.5 million. That's a huge spread. Wow. But the bottom line is the developers are way behind in and the construction pipeline. And so that creates a housing problem, whether it's multifamily or whether it's single family rentals or single family ownership. Number two issue, drawing a comparison to the period of 2002 to '07, but we'll say '07 to what's happening right now.
Okay.
In '07, you had more houses on the market available to be purchased than you have now.
Wow.
Okay. So we're building up to this point where we have a collapse in housing in '08, and I'm trying to draw the distinction between the difference. The other piece of it is affordability. Go back to '07, and '07 to now, your affordability was less in '07 and much higher today because mortgage rates are less. And so that drives people to wanting housing, if, like my daughter, if they can find a place to get into. And the last piece of that is the credit worthiness.
Okay.
In '07, it was extremely lax credit for people to be able to get a mortgage.
Yeah.
Now it is much more stringent. And so there's four factors that today put housing at a different place than it was in '07. And also for multifamily, the criteria for getting a loan is a lot more stringent than what it was in loans that were made in '03, '04, '05, and '06.
Okay.
Those were back in the era where the majority of the loans were called CMBS loans, securitized mortgage-backed securitized loans, and they were unbelievably lax in the lending process, the underwriting. After the collapse, then there becomes just as much of a tightening on underwriting and lending criteria going forward. So we're in a really good place. And so what does that mean for Madera? We provide quality housing across the spectrum. And so there are renters by choice and renters by necessity. And so if you are a renter by necessity, you're not ready for a house, you can't have a house, you can't find a house, but you want quality housing.
Sure.
Whether it's that Lura property that I talked about a little bit ago, all the way up to the brand new 2020 deal. And so that's the space that Madera is in, is crossing the spectrum and being able to provide housing in the rental space until somebody is ready or has the need to go into single family ownership.
Yeah. And with all of the layers that you've put into play for us today, whether it's migration, whether it's land development or the cost of land, whether it's construction costs, whether it's all the things that you're seeing with money coming in, even from other countries, it's exciting to think about all the things that Madera can do going forward, because it impacts the amount of jobs we can offer, it impacts the amount of people that we can help, and all those types of things. And so kind of give us if you would, like, what kind of encouragement would you give to, the rest of us and kind of the different levels of jobs that we work around here or in Houston or in DFW for you on properties? Like, what encouragement would you have for our team members?
Yeah, so I think something that's really hit me as of late is because we do cross that spectrum, I will have brokers that will call me and go, okay, you're not looking at 1980s vintage stuff anymore. I go, no, that's not true. I just haven't seen an opportunity there until 2 weeks ago on a deal. And so, in the last year, we will have done 3 80s deals, some 1990s vintage deals, early 2000, late 2000, up to now we're up into 2020. And so, again, going back to crossing the spectrum gives us the opportunity to see a lot of product.
Sure.
and not get cup holed into, oh, you're just in the 80s space or you're in the value add 90s. We can go all the way up to new construction lease up, all the way back down. And whenever that opportunity arrives, then we can participate. And what that does for us and our team is gives us more opportunity and things to look at.
Yeah, that's great. As we wrap up, again, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for coming in and kind of walking us through this, kind of taking us through all the different things that you're seeing in the multi-family housing industry. I know for me, it's been highly educational just to kind of get okay, here's how the big dogs look at things and what they're looking for. And so to our teammates, wherever you guys are located, we are proud of the work that you're doing for us and all the things that are going on there, and we hope the best for each of you. So thank you guys so much for being with us, and thank you, Charlie, for being with us. And we'll have another touch base for you in the near future. So y'all have
Fantastic.
a great day.
Thank you.
All right.